Audra, Audra,
I don't know.
I thought I saw something about nuns this year. Falls off of the room. Waiting for the hammer to fall at 7 o'clock.
Okay, I'm just getting ready to text them. If we sing like this.
All set? Okay, good evening, everybody. 7 o'clock.
Monday evening, February 11th, meeting of the Rockport Select Board. Nice to see such a great crowd here tonight. Happy to have you. First, items on the agenda are approvals of minutes of the previous meetings. I'll ask a general question of the group. Has everybody had a chance to go through these, and do we have any corrections that need to be made on what we have in front of us?
I don't have corrections per se, but as I went through these, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 issues that I felt were sort of left hanging out there that I'd like to either talk about in the future or get closure on.
Okay, maybe we should do that when we have the manager's report, so we can
Okay.
approve the minutes then, basically.
Yep.
Okay. I looked through the minutes, and the first set of minutes we have, Jeff missed. So if we could take a vote on that first, and Jeff will abstain, and then if the board is okay, then we should be able to lump all the other ones in, we can all vote on them, we can dispense with them a little bit more quickly. Does that make sense? Having said that, I will await a motion on the Monday, August 13th minutes.
I so move to approve the minutes of Monday, August 13th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion on these? If not, all in favor? And any opposed? And one abstain. So 4-0-1 vote on those. And then I would suggest that, because we were all here for the rest of the meetings, if nobody has any issues with the minutes as presented, that we could entertain a motion to approve them all en masse.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of September 10th, 2018, regular session, September 10th, 2018, executive session, October 23rd, 2018, January 28th, 2019, and February 4th, 2019.
Second.
Okay, moved and unanimously seconded. Any further discussion among the board on these minutes? If not, all in favor? And none any opposed? No. Okay, that's a 5-0 vote on all those. And thank you very much to the town clerk for getting us on the road to catching up with the minutes. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay, next select board meeting, I'm not sure we're gonna need one at the end of February, but that yet to be determined, but certainly March 11th, 7 PM here in the Parker Room at the Opera House, and that'll be live streamed. The agenda has a lot of budget meetings coming up, the first of which is this Wednesday, so 2 days hence, and there are several following after that as we get into the budget season and reviewing the budget, so those will be streamed, I believe. Are those budget meetings streamed?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so those will be streamed if you want to watch at home, or if you'd like to join us, we'd be happy to have you. The town office will be closed on Monday, February 18th, that's a week from today, in observance of President's Day. And on Friday, March 1st, candidate nomination papers will be available for one select board term, a 3-year term currently held by myself, and I will announce that I will not be a candidate for re-election for that. 2 library committee seats for 3-year terms currently held by Stevie Cumble and Ann Philly. 1 school board term, a 3-year term currently held by Carol Gartley. 3 budget committee terms, 3-year terms, currently held by several people, I guess currently held by Jeff Parker, Jeff Sharland, and Mark Kelly, and 1 budget committee 1-year term, the seat that's currently held by Jeffrey Payson. So if you're interested in any of those seats, March 1st, you can obtain nomination papers, circulate them around, and they have to be returned by sometime later than March 1st. A reasonable amount of time, yeah, sometime in April.
It's like 45 days before.
Yeah,
election.
so if you get them on March 1st, you should have no trouble getting them filled out. A couple of committee openings, not as many as we've had lately. That's a testament to people stepping up, which is great. We have some stepping up tonight as well. Any agenda changes? I have one, and that is simply to do with the sewer extension new business item B. Checked with the attorneys on that today. We will have to enter as wastewater commissioners to deal with that particular issue. But on the bond vote, we will do that as select board. So when we get to new business item B, we will have to go in as wastewater commissioners and then come out again for item C. Does anybody else have any other agenda changes this evening? Okay, if not, public comment. Public comment should be directed at issues not under discussion on this evening's agenda. Comment from the public will be welcome prior to each agenda item. Further comment will be granted only by permission from the board. All public comment should be brief and to the point. Do we have anybody who wishes to make public comment?
Hi, I'm Heaven Bartlett. I'm the chair of the Rockport Library Committee. And on behalf of my members, I'd like to make a small announcement. Sorry to derail a little bit. So our committee would like to make a one-time donation to the Rockport Library Foundation. We have provided other monies to get this started, but we haven't done anything substantial as a gift. So tonight, we would like to present a check for $150,000. So unfortunately, the numbers you guys have are a little bit off.
That's good off.
Are there, Mr. Chair, if I might, are there any particular pointed items that it can be used for, or anything in
It
general?
is for the building of the library. We wanted to support this. The library committee has been in effect in one form or another since 1914, always to support the needs of the library, and where we are needed most right now is in the building.
Yeah. No, it's good. I just didn't know that you had something special in mind.
No?
Well, thank you very much. Can we go home now? I don't think we can follow that with anything better. That's terrific. Thank you very much to the library committee. I see several members of the committee out here in the audience.
I didn't even do my minutes.
That's a very generous donation, and as Heaven mentioned, the library committee has been instrumental in the early parts of this by making donations to help with the fundraising expenses, and also some seed money to help get us going, and we'll see the effects of that a little bit later this evening. So to have this on top of that is tremendous.
That is wonderful. Thank you very much to all you folks.
Total shock to you.
Does
Keep it secret.
does anybody else have any other public comment?
200.
Well, what a great way to start. Okay. Town manager's report. Mr. Town Manager, we have the report that you have provided to us, and
I just have one addition. The generator, they're delivering it tomorrow before it snows.
Oh.
So they're gonna get it on the pad tomorrow.
Great.
All things going according to plan. It's
well, that's
coming in
good.
about-
That'll be a long-standing goal met.
Comes in it'll be in about 9:30 tomorrow morning.
Does anybody have any questions of the manager on his report? It was published in the local papers, and we have it in our packet.
The streetlight piece, component that you see there, I'd like to, if possible, Audra was trying to set up with the company to come in and answer questions with the board, potentially at the March meeting. If you'd like to have the company come in and answer questions. But basically, they provide all the financing. It works similar to the solar panels, but the buyback is in about 3.5 to 4 years. So the savings we have on the lights, we'll be able to purchase them in about 4 years and then have all LED lights.
Sounds like it's worth hearing about.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the manager? I know, Doug, you had mentioned some items that came up in the minutes. Do you want to?
Yeah, if we're all set for that. Just looking over the old minutes, there were 5 items that I'm not sure we had closure on, and so I'll just go over these, ask Rick to comment, or maybe we can put them on future agendas as needed. We did implement the rapid renewal online auto renewal several months ago, and then there were also some questions, should we do the same for dog license renewal and boat renewal? I think the recommendation was to make sure that rapid renewal was up and running smoothly before we implemented anything else, but it's been a while now. And should we take the next step?
I'm getting the nod. I'm getting the nod from Linda. Yes, we should take the next step. I believe it's going very smoothly. There was a couple bumps in the beginning, but I think we've gotten those worked out, correct? So I think we're.
Right.
Okay, so maybe start on the next part.
Well, on the dogs, we just finished the dogs this year, so
dogs, so-
should be able to get that in time for the renewals next January.
Right, so I think it would be better to go with the boat registrations and ATVs and snowmobiles for the
Okay,
next step.
so,
I'll report
At
back at
them
the
this
next
week.
meeting.
okay.
Plan there.
Harbor Park use, we had a fairly big discussion about what, this came because a citizen complained about using the park and our park fees and everything. So we never really reached a conclusion, I don't think.
I had thought that the Harbor Committee was gonna,
The Harbor Committee has entered into discussions around changing the rates for the rental of the harbor.
Okay. There's gonna be some feedback on that at some point, do we know?
It'll have to come back to the board.
It has to come back.
right,
And remember, what we did was, we did start billing for the exact number of days the park was being used, not just including setup and takedown time, and limited the length of time. If you want to use the park, you have 1 day to set up, 1 day to take down, and one day for the event.
Yeah, but as I said, there's discussion at the Harbor Committee on that.
The rental
My
rates.
understanding is also that there's a rental committee, but I'm not entirely sure, so I don't know exactly who has to be talking to who to make
Okay,
these calls. Rick, maybe you could follow up as.
will do.
My last recollection of that Parks Committee, Linda is probably the last one that's employed with the town. Sue Dates is gone, Tom Ford has passed, I'm no longer there. So your committee is probably of one.
At the October meeting, when we discussed that, it was supposed to be Rick, Brandy, and myself were supposed to meet and go over the parks rental agreement and revise it.
So that's the rental committee that Jeff is referring to?
Yes.
the group of town employees,
Right.
not a committee appointed by the select board.
So, Rick, I offer that you get the feedback from
Will do. Yep.
Abby and what the proposal was there, and then connect with these folks and see if we can come up with one answer.
So Jeff, you said that they were looking at the fees, but were they
Yes.
looking at the frequency?
No. The frequency was reviewed, and in all honesty, it did not seem excessive in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, when it gets excessive is if somebody's renting the park and they take a week of the park's time.
Sure, yeah. I just remember that the resident had complained about the
Yeah.
frequency, so that's what I was
The-
asking.
And I think a couple of years ago, we had made a change that the tents couldn't be so big.
Right, and we limited the
because,
size
you
of
know, We have to
tents.
make sure that the park is available for the residents,
Right.
at least partially, all the time, so. The people who rent it have to understand that they don't have exclusive use of it.
That is correct. I mean, there have been wedding parties that have been moved out of the way so somebody could get their boat launched.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
That makes
which
a
is
good
fine.
story.
We had
And-
one wedding party canceled this year because of the tent size. It was too small.
That's okay.
For that, it was too small for them. It was still a pretty big tent.
We need to make a decision about Glen Cove Park. There were some issues down there. We've heard from some citizens who have written letters to us, but I think we need to revisit that in the not-too-distant future as the weather starts to improve.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Our plan was, based on the conversation, was we were, in the spring, when we get ready to open it, we were going to isolate off the back section and not allow cars to go all the way down in the back, just use the picnic area right in the front.
Okay.
But if you want us to do something different,
Well, it seems
No, I
to me
just
that's reasonable to try it for a year
Yeah.
and see how it goes.
That was what-
You know, as I recall, the only sticking point with that was if a big RV got in there, they wouldn't be able to
Right.
turn around,
Yeah.
so.
Well,
Mike
yeah.
had a plan for that. I don't know.
Have a
how-
signage.
Yeah.
I mean, the other part of that, the activities that are now fairly in front of you are going to be isolated in the back, and unless somebody actually walks out there, meaning the police, you're not going to know who's out there or what they're doing. Just saying.
Yeah.
You know, you're creating another little bit of a headache by trying to remedy the other one.
Well, as I say, I think, it seems to me the idea of giving it a shot, see how it works, is worth trying for a season and see. I mean, if we have problems that crop up immediately and we have big problems, we can always make a change.
How will it be closed off? Would it be just to vehicular traffic?
Yes, it would be closed off to vehicular traffic, which most of that activity requires a vehicle. It doesn't require a vehicle, but it,
No, but I mean, are you going to
Person or
be,
vehicle.
Yes.
are you going to be removing the picnic tables down there and other structures?
I'm not sure. I'll check with Mike.
And finally, there was some talk about the select board creating a reserve account for the FEMA money from DPW.
I think,
How did that get resolved?
I think we put that money in a restricted account or something. I'm trying to remember.
Do you remember?
It was to use for the generator,
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
and I haven't gotten the other money yet to freeze the reserve.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we used it for the generator.
That's right. We set it in a special account for that, and then we said that, I think the discussion was creating a reserve account for any future
And I haven't gotten the money from
FEMA.
the state yet.
Reimbursements, which we haven't had.
Okay.
Okay.
All righty.
Anybody else have anything else for the manager based on his report or any other questions? Quiz the manager, as it were? Okay, if not, we'll move on to our consent agenda, which has one item on it. Accept the donation to the town. Last year in the budget process, we were deadlocked on whether to include the select board stipends or not, and in order to help break the deadlock, I said I would give mine back. I asked Megan not to write me a check. She said she couldn't do that, so she wrote me the check, and I had to write her a check back, and that's what this is.
Yeah, well, we several of us tried to do that, and, okay. But then you wound up paying taxes
Yeah.
on the money.
So,
So it cost you to
It cost you to be a
accept money
select board
from the town.
member.
Yeah. I think we need to address it in this year's budget. Again.
okay, so I need a motion on the consent agenda.
Maybe we didn't accept it. I move to accept the donation to the town of Rockport from Ken McKinley in the amount of $394.93.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? You're voting opposed?
Yeah.
4-1 vote. Dr. Cole opposes the motion. No unfinished business. We have 3 committee applications in front of us this evening. Let me get to the right place in my, there we go, okay. For Robert Hall and Reuben Brown for the Board of Assessment Review, and Margot Murphy for Pathways. Is Bob here this evening?
Yes.
Would you mind coming up to the podium and telling us a little bit about what you would like to do and yourself?
Good evening. I'm often known as the man who married Deborah Hall, but there's more to it than that. I am a native Mainer. We've lived in Rockport for 20 years. I've worked as an attorney in the financial services industry for over 40 years. What I'm doing now is I'm acting as an expert witness in federal and state courts. I'm doing arbitrations, which basically means that I'm acting as a judge in financial disputes. I'm coming up on about 200 of those assignments. So as a result, I don't really have a problem in dealing with statutes and regulations and financial disputes and contentious hearings. So I think that I have a background to serve on this board.
Very good. Anybody have any questions for Bob? Okay, thank you very much. We have Reuben Brown. Is Reuben here this evening?
Yep.
Also for Board of Assessment Review.
Thank you. I've paid taxes here since 2000. I live on Hughes Street, right up the way here. Formerly, I was in the city of New York for 42 years as first an environmental policy advocate and then an energy policy advocate. I've worked in 26 states trying to change policies of one kind or another. a minor success in the legislature here, thanks to at least one legislator in the room and others 10 years ago. Done a little bit of investment appraising as part of this business. I've evaluated over 250 energy investment properties and the like. Includes buildings as well as other things. My immediate interest in the situation is to be useful to the community in some form that can draw on some judgment in a critical situation. So I'd be happy to answer further questions, but as a matter of practice, I continue my consulting business in energy policy. But I don't think I'm going to be pulled away on anything that would prevent me from serving a function that has been described to me as this position.
Does anybody have any questions for Ruben?
No. Thank you.
Thank you for stepping up.
Thank you.
And let's see. Okay, yeah, let's have Margot come up for Pathways. Get them all, and then we'll do all the votes. We have Margot Murphy for Camden Rockport Pathways.
I'm a high school teacher here in Camden, also a Rockport resident for 14 years. And I think the Pathways Committee work has been something that's called to me. I've done a lot of work on national and state boards, and I serve on a couple of boards within the state currently. And this is the first board in terms of town work that has called to me for a number of reasons. I think as we move forward as a society, we've got to look at all ways for people to get around, both for business, but also as a means to attract people to the Mid-Coast. I work with a lot of kids. They're very interested in this topic. And it's a way to bridge town with my day job.
Okay, very good. Does anybody have any questions for Margot? Okay, we have three fine candidates here this evening. So I leave it up to the board whether we want to do these motions individually or does anybody want to
Let me
group them?
bunch them up. I'd like to recommend the appointment of Robert Hall and Reuben Brown as members of the Rockport Board of Assessment Review, and Margot Murphy as a member of the Pathways Committee,
Expiration,
with expirations
2021.
All the
20
same.
21, all the same?
Yeah.
June 30th, 2020.
30,
So that's a
2021.
motion from Jeff, and I think I heard a second from Doug. So all three nominating together. I think we're lucky to have three such qualified people for all of these. So if there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote on that motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a 5-0 vote. Thank you all very much for stepping up, and as I said at the beginning, this is, it's kind of exciting for me because I don't remember a time when we've had so few committee vacancies on our agenda in a long time since I've been on the board, so it's great that people are stepping up. Okay, next we have to go into wastewater commissioners to consider this sewer extension issue, so I would entertain a motion for that.
I move that we exit this meeting and go into the wastewater commissioners meeting.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to enter as wastewater commissioners. All in favor? Any opposed? No. Okay, so we are now wastewater commissioners, and we have Megan and Nate here to enlighten us on the sewer extension project, along with Rick. If Rick, you want to start off?
Yeah, if they can come up to the microphone, but this project has been going on pretty much the whole time I've been here. It started just before I started here. And it's been a process of step-by-step decisions that the board has made over the years, and this will be the final decision, correct? That will finish the sewer extension all the way down Route 1 from Rockland to Sea Light Lane, basically, and all that space in between, correct?
There'll be some cascading decisions around
Right.
procuring contractors. and
Exactly,
that.
but But this is the last decision for you to move forward and get this work done. As you remember, we made some amendments to the TIF recently that allows us to move forward and use the money that we have existing in TIF funds for the engineering, and that's one of the decisions you'll be making tonight. And then the other is to use the TIF money in the future to make the bond payments for this $4.5 million extension. So it's been a long process, but this will be the final pieces of it, which will be a good thing to finally get this done. And also, along with this, while this is moving forward, I believe Maine Water is going to be doing a parallel extension at the same time. So there'll be a water line extension and a sewer extension that will complete the gap that we have in Route 1 currently.
You said 4.5 million, but it's going to be 4.25, right?
Is it four?
Well,
4.25?
I don't know.
That's the estimate at this time, is 4.25.
And we're not voting on the final, when we get to that, we're not voting on the final bond amount tonight, just a motion to proceed and to start the process rolling with what Megan has to do to get the paperwork in order, and then that'll come back to us, I believe, in March.
Yes.
For a vote at that time. And I would add to what Rick has said, because I've kind of been here for a lot of this. This will complete the sewer along that section of Route 1, and in the comprehensive plan, that's a section where we want to have development occurring in town and the presence of the sewer, and there are a lot of properties along there right now that are not being utilized or have been for sale for a while, and getting the sewer in there should help to achieve that goal of getting some more business development in those areas. There's some residential development that's also occurring down near the water behind Oakland Park area, which may utilize the sewer as well. So it's a good thing to get this finally finished. The cost of money is still fairly low, so that's a good thing as well. And I would add too that, as Rick said, we're going to use TIF funds to pay for the initial engineering costs, and also the TIF funds will be making most of the bond payments, I believe, and anything that's not made by the TIF payments would come out of the wastewater budget, so that
The sewer users would.
sewer
pay.
users would pay. So it does not impact the mill rate at all, just in case there's any question about that.
What did Bill estimate the user rate would be on that connection that we're going to be making?
I'm not sure. Do you have that
The
information?
dollar?
I believe it'd be the
Revenue?
same rate as,
Yeah, the rate would be the same across the system. I think the
Right.
revenue estimate is tough because we don't know
Who's going to connect?
who's going to connect.
Well, if it goes by, you still pay
Yeah,
a fee.
that's minimal. That's the
That's the debt
equivalent.
service fee.
Yeah, the debt service fee is-
And it's $48 a quarter.
Yeah, it's a couple $100 a year for users, so that's not gonna be that much, but the user fees when they sign up and they're actually pumping water.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is if you have 62 properties and it's $40, what are you anticipating for revenue?
Right.
It will actually, the debt service fee will actually go down because you'll have more users paying the debt service fee. Because this debt isn't gonna affect the debt on the sewer budget because it's being paid with TIF funds. So we're not gonna have an obligated debt payment that is being paid by sewer users.
Does anybody have any further questions? Nate, do you want to just give us the
Brief synopsis.
30,000-foot view of what we're talking about here for those who are a little bit newer to the game then?
yeah, sure. So just briefly, this process started early in 2014 when Penn Bay Hospital was building the hospice center. And at the time, we were looking at extending sewer for their use. It was the desire of the town at that point to expand that study to the remaining unsewered corridor of Route 1. Now, Penn Bay's plans changed and they didn't utilize, didn't need a sewer extension, but that's really what got this ball rolling. So the area in question that we're looking at is, in essence, South Street on the southern end to Sea Light Lane on the northern end. If you recall, about 2 years ago, we finished an extension from Elwood Avenue to Sea Light Lane. That's what we always considered the northern portion of that study. So this current work seeks to close the gap in the remaining study area. It's about 1.5 miles of sewer, anticipated to be 3 pump stations. And as what was just mentioned a moment ago, Maine Water is looking to come into the project to also extend public's water within the project area. That would be at their expense, it'd be no cost to the town's share, obviously, but they do want to take advantage of this construction project moving forward to close their gap as well. Schedule-wise, what we would be looking at is initiating detailed design as soon as town approval is in place, and basically finishing in June to have a detailed and updated cost estimate ready for the bond vote. With a successful vote of your residents, we would then put the project out to bid over the summer for general contractors, and likely construction would start in the fall, likely right after Labor Day.
And also, one of the features of this section of sewer was that we have a choice as to which way we pump, whether we pump toward Camden or to Rockland. From reading the material, it seems like the design is going to include that capability, not on a day-to-day basis, but on a longer-term basis. If we want to reverse the flow of that section, we could.
Yeah, it's one of the first decisions we have to make, really. The town's interlocal agreements with Camden and Rockport are set to be renewed. I believe Camden is in 2020. Rockland expires in 2022. So as part of that interlocal agreement discussion, you'll be negotiating new rates for them to receive your wastewater. Your largest user in town is the hospital, so there may be a compelling reason to take that flow, which currently flows south to Rockland, and direct it north to Camden. So we'll need to make that decision when we get into detailed design.
But the decision, I think Ken was referring to the fact we sort of had an option to go north or south, but you're making it sound like it's not quite as easy as just turning a valve and one day go to Camden and turn the valve and the other day go to Rockland, depending on the rates.
No, so the project will put all the infrastructure in the ground to be able to do that. So we'll have gravity pipes in the ground to collect the sewer to pump stations, and force main pipes in the ground to then convey that sewer either north or south. And valving at each pump station like you have now at the Rockville pump station, where you could send it south or north, but the pumps and the hydraulics changes, so it's not something you do on a day-to-day basis. It would likely involve changing out a pump in the pump station, but that's a relatively minor expense compared to putting 1.5 miles of pipe in the ground.
It would be a situation where if all of a sudden the rates for Rockland, let's say, went up dramatically, then we could make a decision that, hey, in 6 months, we're going to make the change and put the infrastructure and go the other way with it if we can get a better deal from Camden. But it's obvious, as Knight said, the way I read it, you can't just flip the lever from day to day.
Yeah.
But the
Okay.
infrastructure would be there to allow us that flexibility in the future, which is a good thing.
I did have a question on one of your, number 10 on your descriptions there, where it says pump stations, and it had them listed as 250,000. That's just for the pump station apiece?
Yep.
I had a recollection of something, the one by Main Sport was 400. So did that include labor and all other things?
Yeah,
or-
there was a lot of extensive site work in that location, and we had to keep an existing pump station active.
I just wanted to try to make sure that the numbers are,
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
Yep.
This number is probably more relatable to the Rockville pump station that was installed 2 years ago.
all right, thank you.
Nate, could you go over a little bit of what you've done already that's gotten us to this point?
Sure. So when we finished the last extension, we had a little bit of leftover money. DEP allowed us to use it to obtain survey and ledge probes for this extension area. So that work was completed back in 16, I believe. Just recently this fall, as this TIF district was being adjusted and taking shape, we went out and spent a little bit of time just confirming existing conditions. As you can imagine, it's a lot easier to do when there's no snow on the ground than when there's a lot of snow on the ground. So we've gone around to each property and just documented the existing conditions, what the property use is, where the vacant properties are, really so that we're ready to launch into this design effort now. So I would say what we would call preliminary design has largely been done. So that the next steps are the where's the pipe gonna go? What are the size of the pump stations in that design? The DOT permitting, the DEP permitting. We're gonna need to look at downstream infrastructure regardless of whether we go north or south to make sure that the downstream pump stations have the pumping capacity to handle that flow, and if not, address that in this design. So those are the detailed design elements we get into next.
And Rick, have we had any input at all on CDBG grants or any other grants to help cover this?
Yes, there's some, Bill has worked on some of that stuff. It all is dependent on potential jobs created by businesses that are potential connectors. So he's done some preliminary work. There's not a lot of hard numbers yet.
We did receive the Northern Borders grant for $250,000.
That's right,
Which we
too,
have
yeah.
already received that. And then Woodard and Kern is working on some additional state funding for us that was passed in the November ballots for projects like this.
The environmental bond in November provided the DEP with some discretionary grant funds. It's a long shot, quite honestly, for the community, given the amount of need that's out there, but the answer is always no until you try. So we're applying for that money, and likely we'll also apply for their SRF program, which provides low-interest loan.
I mean, we'll have a shovel-ready project, so to speak, so sometimes you have to be opportunistic with those.
The big item that Bill is applying for is the Economic Development Administration. It's a federal public works agency. Would be a substantial grant if he was successful.
Ken?
Yep. Bill, yeah, come on up. Question?
Don't contradict anything I just said.
On your side.
I'd like to add a couple of things to that. When we finished that last extension, remember I was on the board at the time, we were approached almost immediately, if maybe even during the construction, by somebody who was just a little bit further south of Sea Light Lane. It's, oh, I wish I'd known because we really need it down here. But there's also the issue that unless they've changed their plans, Penn Bay Hospital is planning on bringing a lot of their doctor's offices back onto their campus, which is going to open up a number of buildings along there, and having the sewer in there could make it much more economically viable for somebody to purchase that, because they don't then have to worry about all the subterranean septic systems that they'd have to put in there. So I think that's also an advantage to the town to have it. And of course, you know, there's a number of undeveloped properties along there. And I think you already mentioned the Oakland Commons or the Oakland Shores, maybe having a development that could utilize such a thing like that. So I'm encouraging you to listen to my good buddy here.
Yeah, the Oakland Commons or Oakland Park project is moving forward, but this will, the timeline that we're using will meet those expectations of that potential project. We're not going to be holding them up at this point. It should dovetail nicely with what they're planning there.
Okay, good. Does anybody have any further questions of Megan or Nate on this issue?
What's the max flow you expect to have go through that 4-inch force main? Sorry, I had to ask a nerd question.
No, it's fine.
That was just the question I was gonna ask.
So just to give you a sense of the build-out flows,
Let me ask it a different way. Based on development of that area and those particular facilities that we talked about, what do you believe the additional capacity might be? I mean, how big did you oversize it?
so so for the study area, so we look at it, if everybody connected,
Right.
what would that flow be to the pump station? Because it's oversizing is challenging, but undersizing is far more challenging.
Yes, it is.
So we're looking at build out through what I'm just calling here the south pump station, so the southernmost pump station, could be as high, Big Sky, all properties developed, 600 plus gallons per day. 600,000, I'm sorry, plus gallons per day. So that's the infrastructure, the 4-inch force main is sized to handle that flow at a reasonable velocity, and then it gets into even real geekier things about resuspension velocities and stuff like that. So again, that's Big Sky. We're not anticipating those level of
And I think
flows
the-
in
the,
2020 terms.
Does the build-out analysis include the backlots? Because I recall when we had that last extension, we ran into a little bit of an issue there or whatever. So it counts all the possible backlots.
It does, yep.
So chances are it's, the analysis is really at a maximum for what is likely to happen, at least within a generation. My words there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the idea is to make sure you're not redoing it 10 years from now.
Right.
Because you undersized your force main pipe by 2 inches.
I still have to work for 20 more years or so, so me being back here in 10 years
We'll just
explaining
sign
that
off
would
on
be
the bottom of the
unpleasant.
drawing so we know who to go to.
I'm sorry? Oh, gee.
Pay him no mind.
All right, so
Okay.
I move to approve the final engineering and design work as presented in our packet by Nate McLaughlin of Woodward and Curran at a cost of not to exceed $178,500.
Second.
Have a motion, have a second. Any further discussion on the motion? And again, I would point out, this will be paid for with existing TIF funds, so it's
Can
not,
you include that in your motion? If
Yes.
it's not in there.
To be paid for by existing TIF funds,
No, second that
Commercial
one.
street tip.
Commercial Street
No,
TIF
second
funds.
that one.
you got that, Linda? Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion?
But that's, we're collecting now.
If not, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Now I need a motion to exit as wastewater commissioners and come back in as the select board.
Is there anything you'd like to, well, no, don't we need to do this first?
This we have to do as select board.
Okay, all right.
Because the
all
town's
right.
going to do that bond.
I move we exit wastewater commission and re-enter select board.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we're back in as select board. And the next item is dealing with the Woodard and Curran sewer bond, which is the process of getting the bond article in the pipeline. Like the way you wrote that in there, Rick.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
Oh, man.
I'm here all week, folks.
For placement on the warrant. And basically, this is to approve getting the process started. We won't actually place the bond on the warrant until next month, I believe. So Megan, do you want to give us a brief synopsis of what
So-
this does?
Basically, what this authorization does is to allow us to move forward with doing the bond language, doing the bond pricing. As Nate said earlier, we are gonna look at doing the SRF program, which gives us an interest rate of about 1%, which is significantly lower than doing a general obligation bond. And this extension will qualify for that program. The nice thing about that program is that we don't have to wait for a spring or fall issue. They issue all year long. So once the bond, assuming the bond is approved in June, we can then submit the application for the financing and start the project.
So our suggested motion mentions a 4.25% bond.
That was when we were gonna go with the general obligation. I didn't
4.25
see your.
million.
425 million. I didn't put a dollar sign, sorry.
Okay, okay.
And it may be advisable to pass your motion with that being an up to amount. You are eligible for SRF, but it's not, we don't have it right
Right.
now, so you wouldn't want to
Okay.
handcuff yourself.
So in other words, what we would be voting on this evening is up to $4.25 million. And then if we get some of these other programs in, it may end up being less.
Right.
Okay. Okay, does anybody have any further questions or want to go with a motion?
I move to approve approve the inclusion of a $4.25 million municipal bond to construct a municipal sewer extension within the newly created Route 1 TIF district. Language for the actual warrant article to be developed by bond counsel and approved by the board for placement on the 2019 warrant.
Before we second that, do you want to add up to before that?
Please.
I'm sorry.
And June 2019 warrant, please.
Okay. So
Okay,
amended.
So the motion is for inclusion up to a $4.25 million and the placement on the June 2019 warrant.
Sorry.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so Mark, you comfortable seconding that?
Yep, second, good.
Okay, any further discussion on this motion? If not, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that's a 5-0 vote. Thank you, Nate.
Thank you very much,
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
for coming
Thank
in.
you.
It's always, your explanations are always very clear, and it's very helpful for the board.
I'm often accused of going on for too long, but I saw the library was on the agenda, so I figured you want me to be quick.
There you go. Okay. Next item on the agenda is to talk about the West Rockport Fire Station, and I'll cede to Rick for that to give us the view of what we have.
Yeah, in your packet, one of the goals of the select board was to come up with a plan to move forward on a strategic plan for how we're gonna move forward on the West Rockport Firehouse. And we've been working on that for probably close to a year or more. And what we've come up with is a plan that will allow for a lot line adjustment with the neighbor Nelson Tolman, which is pictured up on the screen now. And it will allow us the ability to, in the future, build a firehouse that would be 2 bays and potentially 3 bays that could house 4 fire trucks or 6 fire trucks. 25 years from now, if we needed an extra 2 fire trucks out there, we could do that. So the critical piece of this is, as you know, the 2 properties, the 2 buildings are very, very close to each other, the way they're situated, is to use the piece of land that we purchased 2 years ago, Jason? Use the piece of land we purchased 2 years ago to build the station, but we still need a little bit of a lot line adjustment to be able to square off the front of that station and give proper passage around the building to be able to site the station on a lot that makes sense, that's expandable, and gives us enough room to work around it. So we'd need a little piece of land, a sliver of land there. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. So we'd need those 2 pieces of land there in order to give us enough room to get around the building.
Rick, can you just blow up just that part, just the
Yeah.
corner?
Yeah, I can't, but Jeff can. He's. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So, I think if you go to there's another plan there. I think it's the next.
Next slide down is a
Next
little more
slide.
detailed, yeah.
Yeah. Gives you a detailed picture of the, basically of where a footprint of the building could go. And so the way the building is sited there gives us enough room to get around the building, and if we needed to, we could put in another bay on the side of the building there.
Let me ask Deborah and Jeff, are you familiar with the land purchase we made a couple of years ago? out in this area?
Absolutely not.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit, because
So
right
back
now,
up.
the fire station is on a very small piece of land right out
Right.
there at the corner of 17
I
and 90.
think if you go to the next slide, that might have the. does the
Yeah, that
next-
has the property lines on it, I think.
Yeah, that's the original
See-
building.
See, the piece of land that we bought a couple of years ago is where you can see a little house and a garage down there. No,
No, it's further
right
down.
down there.
Yeah.
We bought that piece
Right.
of property, and it extends well behind Nelson Tolman's property, all the way out there. We bought that simply to have it for the possibility of fire station expansion, so that's the piece of land that we're talking
All
about
right, you
now.
bought the lot just before the fire station on Route 17.
Yes, yep.
Right. There was a house on the lot which we took down. Oh, no, we moved it. We sold
Yeah,
it
we-
for
yeah.
$1, and I forget who it was, bought it and
Dave
moved it
Herrick.
down the road. And the garage is still there, and it's being used for storage, but I think the long-term plan would be for that to go away as well. So
Yes.
anyway,
The-
that's how we got where we are as far as owning that land out there.
The land behind Nelson's property, where it says Town of Rockport, kind of in the middle right there, it's of no value to us at all. Bill, if you can come up, you can explain a little bit better, but it has some setback issues. No, the other Bill, sorry, that Bill, sorry. It has some setback. I was involved in that too. Oh, yeah, you were.
Well, come on, Bill.
We'll
double it up.
It has, I believe it has a 75-foot setback from the stream, is it
Yeah,
75?
the stream has a setback associated with it of 75 feet. That's regulated by DEP. There's got to be a real good reason to be within 25 to 75, and there's really no reason to be within 0 to 25, so that does affect the utilization of that property. And Jeff Parker, if you wouldn't mind just panning over or zooming out just a little bit more, you could just see the overall extent of the balance of the property. You can see that, for the most part, the Thorndike, the formerly Thorndike-owned property that the town has purchased, is bounded by that stream for its length west to east as it extends all the way up Route 90.
So the property behind, the Tolman property is very, very narrow. I don't remember how deep it is. It's 100 feet or something?
Yeah, we could zoom in and get an exact number, but I wouldn't try to
Yeah,
quote it
it's-
without.
It's 87 feet?
87 feet, yeah.
It's only 87 feet. So for development purposes, the way it is now, it is very, very limited for development purposes. The exchange of land will put the land in the hands of the Nelson Tolman, which at some point, if he decides to sell the property, will become more developable and potentially bring more tax base to the town. Because the way it is now, only a very small building can go on that property. But if you back up to the other plan, Jeff, the one above it, that gives a bigger parcel of land that potentially could be developed and be more, have a business on it that would provide more taxable value. So the question is, do you want to move forward with this idea? It will take a town meeting action to do a lot line adjustment for the property in green in exchange for you have to see the property out back there. It's very wet. It would require a lot of fill in pink. And then the third facet of it is if you go way over to the outside edge, which is not on this plan, but to take that other parcel, the last piece that we would still own, and get, see if there's any interested parties or bidders that would want to buy that parcel of land. It's our understanding that it may be of some interest to Craig Mitchell, who owns behind there as an alternative access to his land. Oh, is Craig here? Oh, Craig's right here right now. So it may be of interest to him as an alternative access to his property, correct? Again, bringing more taxable value to the town. I'm not sure what his plan is for that piece of land back there, but it's of little value to anyone other than an abutter. And Nelson has really no reason to want to keep that or own that, and so it would be, the question would be, do you want to move forward with going out to bid and seeing if there's anybody who wants to purchase that piece of land as well?
So let's talk about the lot line change
Adjustment.
first. You want to go from where to where?
So if you go up to that other map,
In green.
it's basically, we would be acquiring the green area there, those tiny little green parcels.
Right.
And we would be trading that for the,
No,
Not
just
that part
just
between
on
the
the-
two buildings.
Right, just between
All
the
right.
two buildings.
So those two little slivers.
Yep.
You want to move the blue line you want to get rid of that, which is the current line, or not?
Bill, yes, it's the one most on the right, correct, Bill?
Let's blow it way up.
Yeah, if you go in a little bit further, it's approximately, I believe, 844 square feet thereabouts, that green shaded parcel.
The town would acquire the green shaded parcel, am I
Okay.
correct?
Correct.
And then the
Straightening
town
out the
would
lines.
All right, so-
cede to Nelson Tolman the orange or pink, whatever you want to call
Right.
them. A little colorblind, so.
Right.
So you want to move the lot line, his lot line back to the red dotted area to the right?
No,
No.
the red lot, the red line would depict the
Setback,
current
isn't it?
setback or the modified setback if that agreement went forward.
So really, what we're looking for at this point is are we on the right track with this? Because it will take some work with attorneys and with getting deed stuff and getting things onto the warrant, because it has to be voted on by the voters. Are we on the right track or not? And I figured it would be a better time to bring this up now than to wait and have, come forward with something and have you say, what, are you crazy? This is a terrible idea.
Could we also talk a little bit about the fire station plans? Because this is a change from the last time the board was talking about fire station. We were talking previously about expanding the current fire station and doing some things, and now it looks like we're talking about a different building entirely. So I think it would be
You guys
helpful
wanna
for the
come
new
up with
board members if
Yeah,
if
they-
Jason could come up
Yep.
and let us know the history of where we have been with the fire station issues.
So, as you indicated, Rick had asked us to look at the whole entire project, what we can do, what we can't do. The biggest thing that we ran into, Gartley Dorsky came over, surveyors to evaluate the whole property. If you look at the blue line to the top, right there, what happens is the state owns that. So that right now is currently 15 feet up into where the apron is for the fire truck. So if we were to remodel the current fire station, build it, redo it, and then 3 years down the road, the state says we're redoing the intersection, we're taking our property, we would have nowhere to put a fire truck. We couldn't pull the fire truck out. If we did, we'd be right out into the middle of Route 90. So Bill and his team looked it over and said it's just not plausible to construct or remodel the current structure. We have to do something different because of the state and their property. The current flagpole, Dr. Cole's sign, all that is currently on state, so if something was to change, all that would be removed. That's the reason we had to reevaluate the entire layout.
And doing a project like this for a new building is several years down the road, I presume.
Correct.
So at this point, I think what we're deciding on as a board is, do we sort of like the conceptual plan? Do we want to make the lot line adjustment to allow us to perhaps proceed with this at a later time and have the other ancillary effects of maybe increasing the value of the other properties?
The big thing that we want to try to get this taken care of as soon as possible is we have roughly how much money? It's like 130,000. We currently have $130,000 sitting in the bond for this project. What we're trying to do is we have to use these funds, you said by the summer. So what we're looking to do is make this arrangement with Mr. Tolman. What that would allow us to do is immediately get Gartley Dorsky and engineers and everybody in there to start prepping the property. They would be able to build it up, get the retaining walls, do the drainage. That way that surface could sit and compact over 1, 2, 3, however long it, the town
Some of the
decides
site,
to wait.
to get a chunk of the site work done, because two things. First is that you never know with fire departments, what might happen with a potential donor coming forward, or, you may have, you never know what's going to happen with fire departments. People love fire departments. And also, I'm not sure if the governor's new budget includes it, but there was some legislation moving through that had money in it for fire safety buildings. So there was some money moving through the legislature to partially fund fire structures. Whether that actually happens or not, I don't know, but again, if you have a shovel-ready project and we already have a plan in place, the likelihood for us to get a station would be a lot greater for us. I mean, this is a plan that's off into the future several years. I mean, we're building a library now, so it's off in the future several years, but we can't move forward unless we start something. And,
And we have a large amount of funds to pretty much get the whole thing set up and ready to go that we'll lose if we don't try to take advantage of this situation now.
Okay. So this is a first step process, and as Rick says in his notes, final decision not needed. We just need to know. So I think basically what we need is a nod from the board to say, yeah, let's pursue this, and get this lot line adjustment ready for us to vote on.
What would hold it up from us voting on it?
Well,
it'll have to
eventually,
come
it
back
has to
to
be
you.
voted as a property exchange. It has to go to town meeting.
And it will come back to you as a warrant
We
article?
will be putting it on the warrant. But I think what Rick wants from us is just, if we think it's a terrible idea, to tell him now, so he doesn't use resources to push it forward.
Do you want a motion?
No, I just, at this point,
Sense of the board?
It's a nod. You know, just a nod saying, yeah, let's keep moving. Yeah, Bill, you have a question?
This is more of a procedural question. My recollection is at the June town meeting, we always vote one article to allow
I
the
checked
select
that.
board to make lot line adjustments that are advantageous to the town.
I tried that one.
Well, why vote it if we're not gonna use it?
I did try that. I ran it by town council, and town council said that, you know,
I think the reasoning, Bill, was that because there was there was a larger part of the parcel that was changing hands. If it was just the little lot line adjustment right there,
That would be
and you
fine.
weren't trading the other piece, then I think, yeah, we could have done that. We could have just done it with a select board action.
and the risk was, his point was right, is the risk, you don't want, you know, several years down the road, Nelson to have a potential, we're talking about Nelson selling the property or something, but having it be challenged in a title search, that it wasn't done absolutely correctly. It'd be this is too important, so.
So I'm saying
Yeah,
nod.
as long as you guys are okay,
Yeah.
we'll move
I
forward
think
and bring it
makes
back.
sense to
Good.
push the process forward. We'll have other decisions that have to be made farther down the road, but this seems like a good step at this point. So, okay.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Next item. Vote to approve execution of the library bond issue as approved by voters in November of 2018. This is what everybody came for, I think. Let me talk first about the cash flow spreadsheet. And then the capital campaign folks are here, and our owner's representative is here as well to answer any questions that you may have about that.
Does it make sense to first talk about the foundation's plan for generating the cash, and then talk about the cash flow sheet itself?
Well, the cash flow sheet and chart, and I asked that question of the foundation when we talked the other day before the meeting, and they thought that doing the spreadsheet first made some sense.
Okay.
So we can present their program, and then they can tell us how they're gonna execute that. So this cash flow sheet, if we can get it up on the screen.
And if you could, while you're pulling it up, Ken, if you could talk about who and how it was developed and
Yep,
reviewed?
Yep, absolutely. Several weeks ago, knowing this meeting was coming, I wanted to get some real data here so that we had some information so the board felt comfortable about the decision. So I reached out to our owner's representative, Charlie from Five Builders, who's here tonight, and asked him for a quarter-by-quarter analysis of what the costs of the project would be. He provided that to me. The initial numbers he provided ran from the second quarter of 2019 through the third quarter of 2020, and the initial numbers that he provided with me were the construction costs only, which were $3 million, roughly, plus or minus a little bit. We then, at a meeting, talked about the idea that the total project cost is $3.5 million, which includes soft costs, and so at Charlie's suggestion, I inserted half of the soft costs into the second quarter of 2019 and half of them into the second quarter of 2020.
Just for people following, this would be the first row.
The very
of
top
the
line, everything
spreadsheet.
outlined in red.
All right, and so you baked the directs and the indirects in the same
Yep.
line here?
Everything is in there. And these are estimates. And Charlie will let me know, but they're estimates based on a lot of work. a lot of work by the owner's representative and other contractors as well, doing fairly detailed estimates of the cost of this project. And so Charlie can answer any questions you might have about the estimates, but here are the numbers as they sit.
So that total project expenditure adds up to 3.5.
Yep, 3.498 roughly, so 3.5. Now, we have already had some expenditures. We've had some soft costs. Soft costs, by the way, for those who are interested, are things like architect's fees, engineering fees, permitting fees, other consultants and things like that that don't actually have to do with bricks and mortar. We've had some of those expenses already. We've also had the demo expenses, and so from Charlie's number from the second quarter, I backed out the expenses which Megan provided to me, which we already have had, and so that's the $161,000 that you see in that quarter one 2019 box under project expenditures. And then after the adjustments, the rest of that is estimates as provided by our owner's rep as to how the project costs will be distributed quarter by quarter. It's a little rough at this point as far as the timing goes. When we get that right down to it, we'll be doing month to month or even week to week, but for this analysis, it works. The next line down is just expenditures running total, which you can see as it goes across, eventually gets to the 3.5 million. The next line down says RLF cash on hand, and the line below that, RLF new cash during quarter. I asked the foundation to provide me with these numbers for their plan as to how much cash they had on hand now and how they saw their fundraising plan going forward, when they expected to get money in. And they took quite a while doing this analysis and spent a lot of time doing it, and they will, I'm sure, address that during their presentation about their plan to do that. But at any rate, that's where these numbers come from.
Clarity on that one. So for example, Q1 19, you get 707 in there.
Right.
That's at the start of the quarter?
Start of the quarter, yep.
Okay, thank you.
And then the next line down is the new cash coming in during the quarter.
Yeah.
And then the next line below that is the disbursement to the town during the quarter from the foundation. That line is entirely outlined in green until you get over to the purple, and I'll talk about that in a little while. Okay. The next line down is bond proceeds
Could I
available.
just point out here too for Jeff, the cash on hand there does not include the donation that was
That's
made
right.
this evening.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Okay.
Haven't you screwed me up?
All right. There's a spot where we're going to need that further down.
Yep. So, and then the next line below that, bond proceeds balance beginning of quarter, and you see the 1.5 million shows up at the beginning of the third quarter. According to Megan, we'll actually have that money if everything passes sometime, I think, in May. So we'll have that money at that time. And then bond funds applied during the quarter, which is just my estimation, and let me talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The bridge financing available is the $300,000 that the town voted for, and then applied, as you can see, across there. And
So
then
can you walk us through further down? Because for example, Q1 2020, we still have the bridge loan
Yep.
essentially in place.
Yep.
The next quarter, you're going to apply 100,000 of that to the project.
Right.
Which will leave you with 200,000.
Yep.
Next quarter, you're going to apply everything.
Yep.
That leaves you with nothing. And then, tell me about Q4 and 5. The minus 210, the minus 105.
That's the foundation paying back the bridge loan. And the
All right.
the 210
So that's
is
where
a little
that's
bit
where
of
that's
interest
coming
in
from.
there.
All right, I see. It's further up. Okay,
Yep.
that's what your purple boxes are.
Yep.
So that 210 is moving down.
Yep.
All right, gotcha. Perfect.
And then the very bottom line, and I mentioned this earlier, the library contribution, which they had already made, which was 80,000, and there actually was a little bit of interest to that, and using Megan's numbers here, 80,257. So if you look at this quarter by quarter, the green boxes are all money applied to the project to meet the expenses shown in the red boxes for each quarter. And if I did it right, they should add up right. Please don't crucify me if I round it off wrong in one quarter or another. But you can see the first quarter, the expenses are going to be paid by a combination of funds from the library committee and from the foundation. The second quarter is all the foundation. And then in the third quarter, when we have the larger expense, then we're kicking in some bond money. And this is just one possible way of doing it. You know, when Megan starts looking at the numbers, she may apply the bond funds differently, but I wanted to go through this in a way that seemed to make sense. One nice thing about this is that the disbursement to the town from the foundation that I've indicated in each quarter is always less than the foundation has on hand at the beginning of the quarter, with one exception. That's the third quarter of 2020, where it's a little bit behind, but thanks to the library committee, that should change. And then we go on from there. So
Do we have any, I'm just asking questions. Is there an advantage to not using the bridge loan at all?
yes.
That's what okay.
And in fact, that's one thing. Let me talk a little bit about what the library committee's donation means tonight, and we'll have to get some input from the foundation on this too, because I don't know whether the foundation was expecting this or not. I don't know whether they are counting this as part of their 2 million goal or not. So I don't know whether that means now they
But that
raised 2,150,000, but at any rate, there's some cash infused into the project earlier, and that may mean that we, as Jeff suggests, we don't have to use as much bond, but the longer we keep the bond proceeds in the bank, the more interest we'll make off them. So if this donation allows us to perhaps forestall using some of the bond funds earlier in the process, then that's also the good for the town.
So what is the value to the town of not using the bond funds?
The bridge loan
The
fund?
bridge loan or the bond
I'm
funds?
sorry, the bridge loan. If we didn't have to touch that 300,000,
We won't have to pay any interest on it.
but how much is that interest?
Well, I made an estimate right here, and I talked to Megan about it. What's the rate on that, do we think, Megan?
15,000 if you look at this.
Less than 4%. It depends, I mean, if we use it in the, and pay a chunk of it back within 6 months of using it, then I think that $10,000 interest number is probably more than we would have to pay.
I mean, you're,
So what we figured the initial interest payments for when we did the bond article was we did it for a 3-year maturity, not knowing how long the foundation was doing the donation agreements for. So we have technically up to 3 years to pay back the bridge loan.
But there's no prepayment penalty on that, correct?
Correct.
So,
okay, but it could be, I mean, if no other money came, it would be $40,000 worth of interest, plus or minus, over a 3-year,
We estimated it at 24,000,
for 3 years?
just under. Mhm.
Okay.
yeah. So I probably have, if the bridge financing is paid back as quickly as I've indicated it here, then I probably have overestimated the interest paid. But absolutely, if we don't need the bridge financing, then we don't pay that interest. And that's why that I haven't shown as being used here until very late in the process.
All right, and we can dip into that at any rate we would need.
Right.
Correct?
The way
We
that,
don't have to do it in chunks.
No.
the way that article was written, it was up to and as needed. So we could, if we don't need it until, if we needed some money right now because we knew that the foundation was gonna get a big chunk of money in next month, we could use it and then pay it right back, and then we could use it again. I
Okay.
assume it's somewhat like a revolving line of credit.
Oh, we could write it like that when we do the
Yeah.
when we do the issue.
So the low point in the curve here is at the end of Q1 2020. Because that's when you start dipping into the bridge loan,
Yeah,
at the start of Q2.
right, it started as second
Okay,
quarter, right.
so that's where the low point is.
Yep.
By low point, I mean that's, where the lines cross. Okay.
The interesting thing, and this is thanks to Doug, when I originally did this analysis, I hadn't included the $80,000 initial contribution that the library committee made. And without that in there, that put us into a negative situation in the third quarter of 2020. And so that's there now, and we don't have that situation anymore. And I think with the extra cash infusion we just got early in the game from the library committee, that's going to help on several fronts. It's going to give us a little bit more of a cushion down into that second, third quarter of 2020, and also perhaps allow us to leave some of the bond proceeds in the bank a little bit longer, and maybe delay
not.
having to use the bridge financing.
Yeah, or not touch the bridge.
Yeah. I remember in the beginning, when we were first talking about this, Megan made the comment, she thought we may not need that bridge financing at all, and some of that will depend on how the fundraising goes and how the, things go along here as well. We've also, in the cost estimates, and this was Charlie's suggestion, we put the soft costs all in the second quarter of 2019 and second quarter of 2020. And if anything, that's a little front-loaded, because a large chunk of the soft costs in the second quarter of 2020 are actually for furnishings for the new library. And so that could be pushed off a little bit later if necessary. It wouldn't impact the construction of the building. And so we would have that to play with as well. And I would also point out, and Charlie can speak to this, because he knows more about it than I do, that all of Charlie's numbers include, as I understand it, a 15% contingency.
There's a contingency in the budget, yes, sir.
Right. So hopefully, and this is all depending on how the bids come in, but based on the plan that we have right now, it seems to me to work.
All right, and then the big quarters from the Library Foundation are the fourth quarters, and I assume we'll learn about that later, but that's the quarters which you could expect some of the already the pledged contributions to
Yeah, I
hit.
think they'll talk about
Okay.
that as far as, how they came up with their numbers and what their plan is and how this donation tonight impacts that and all that sort of thing, but
Well,
this,
the donation tonight impacts, I mean, it
is a
gives you a little
significant
more,
impact.
gives you a little more sand in the plan here,
Yep.
particularly around
Yeah.
having to touch the bridge loan.
And right now, you're looking, if you look at the very end, in the totals column, those are all the totals at the top totals column there, 3.49 is the project cost. The 1.9 is the amount that the foundation has put into the game. The 80,000 at the bottom has been put into the game by the library committee, and then the 1.5 million. So those all roughly add up to the 3.5 million. And at the end of the game here, the foundation has some cash left over. And as I say, that how the bond funds and the bridge financing are dispersed and applied is not up to me. That'll be up to Megan when it gets in there, and she'll be looking at that. And this is just a plausible way that it would work, based on the information that I got from Charlie and from the foundation. So I'll be quiet now, and somebody else can ask any questions. Well, maybe it's time for John and Philip to come on up, and we have in our packet their plan and what they would like to say about how they will, they gave me the numbers for the spreadsheet, but now they're gonna talk to us about how they will accomplish those numbers.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'm John Veman. I'm the Vice President of the Rockport Library Foundation. Before we go anywhere, another huge thank you to the Rockport Library Committee. You guys are just awesome. That was a huge surprise. I only learned about it like just recently. But anyway, no, that was really incredible. You guys have been a really solid supporter right from the very beginning on this. And quite honestly, we wouldn't be where we were without the whole committee's support. So thank you very much for that. As you can see, we're doing our job. We're ahead of schedule. We're in near record time. We've since coming together as volunteers in May of 2018, we've now secured donations and pledges of excess of $1.3 million. That's not counting the 150 that we just got. As requested, we've submitted a plan to you that's in detail, month by month, of what we expect to do going forward. We've given you cash flow projections. As you can see, we'll have, by beginning of first quarter 2002, we'll have $777,202, not like we're counting, but that much in cash, plus the $150,000 that we just received tonight. We're projected to receive or raise an additional $635,000 cash by year-end 19. Note that of that, to anticipate probably one of your questions, we've already have pledges of $250,000 of that in hand. So of that, for the rest of 2019, 635 is on the schedule yet to raise. We have 235 in hand plus the 150. So 385,000 is already in hand.
I'm looking at this cash flow and I'm seeing a number bigger than 635 for new cash during the quarter. Maybe I'm off a column or two. Showing raised in Q1.
Oh, I'm sorry, going forward, 635. From Q2 to the year end, 635.
bottom here.
Yes. Yes, that number's right. Q2 through Q4, you're expecting to raise 635.
Yes. We're already
Yep.
a couple months ahead of, because that's the start of Q1. We're now thinking start of Q2. But we're already ahead of schedule based on what's here. So that's a really good feeling to have.
Well, the nice part about the way it's laid out here is you know what the bogeys are by quarter.
Yeah, yeah. And that was our hope. And I think a lot of us worked on this. Ken, his leadership, and Charlie's input, and Philip, everybody really pitched in to try and streamline this process so you guys could see it clearly.
Anybody have any questions for John or Philip on the plan?
Were you going to hit the high points of the activities?
Well, yeah, if you'd like, we can go through that. I don't know if it's, I mean,
We don't need to go in detail, but I mean, just some of the key milestones.
yeah, well, basically, in a nutshell, the recap is if you break down the whole year's activities, we're primarily focused on the major donors, bringing in the majority of the funding. We're expecting some additional gifts and foundations, but it's relatively modest. So I think it's very, it's conservative, but very realistic. We expect to get another 100,000 in that category. Under the corporate sponsors, we're coming up with a theme of 100,000 from 100 businesses is our goal. And we've budgeted appropriately towards that goal. And then in community gifts, we're not expecting huge total dollars out of the smaller donors, but they're very important to this process to really involve the community. So with the Buy a Brick program, some various fundraisers that we're going to be working on in the next few months to kind of bring people together and get them focused on it. We're being relatively conservative in that department as well as far as our actual the money we'll bring in at the end of the day. But we're particularly focused on the summer months because right now you can see we're not projecting a lot of cash coming in, and that has to do with just practically speaking, this is a time of year when people aren't, they're probably worried more about checks they're going to write to Uncle Sam than they are about, making charitable donations. You got to kind of be realistic about that, and I think we've got our eyes open about that. Also, a lot of our large donors are not in the area right now, but we do have an agent in Florida at this moment.
Secret weapon.
Who's actually hard at work in that regard. Hi, Bill, wherever you are watching. So, Bill Leone's really been a key fundraiser for us in this campaign. I don't know if there's any other specific questions you have about the plan, Jeff, but
I know one thing, when we met the other evening, John, that I bring up to the board is, Jeffrey brought it up, the Q4 numbers on the fundraising are really big. And I had asked them about the Q2 and Q3 numbers because they're smaller, and I didn't know, my unschooled mind, I was thinking, well, they have a certain amount they're going to get at year end, and they're just estimating, well, we'll get some of it in the second quarter and the third quarter. And Philip and John told me, no, that those numbers are projected on actual pledges that people have said they will pay during the second and third quarter. So that was a nice piece of information
All
for
right,
me.
so if we take for Q4 19, for example, the 575, just rough numbers, what percentage of that is already committed pledge?
well, with the 150 from the library committee, I'd say roughly, what would that be, 400?
Well, the
400 of that is already,
So,
I'm getting into a little bit of funny math here.
yeah,
Probably
the
about
150,
350,
350 of the 575 is already committed pledge?
yeah, give or take, yeah.
All right, so you're looking in the fourth quarter then for
Sound right?
Yeah, that's
a healthy,
What's that?
you're looking in Q4 for a healthy chunk.
Well, yeah,
New
and
pool of new
that
money.
that's pretty much the practice, is particularly with charitable giving. That's, everybody reflexively
Yeah.
is oriented towards year end, and, I've even heard from some of the members in the room here that, you know, yeah, I got it here on my stack, I'm gonna go through it, you know, kind of thing, and that's when
Is it,
everybody kind of,
yeah, that-
and we also have people that have formally pledged at that time,
okay,
that that's when they prefer to write the check.
that's in the 350.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's another two,
But I think you
Two and
can
a
see,
quarter.
just because we've loaded so much in that quarter, that's human nature to push charitable donations into the fourth quarter. We'd love it if they come in earlier, and they very well could. Like I say, our agent in Florida is working overtime right now. We never know what they bring home.
Any further questions for?
no, I'd just like to express my appreciation to the group for delivering on the month-by-month plan, and also for laying out the cash flow so that we all have the comfort level we need to know that this project's gonna get paid for as it goes along, and there's not gonna be a break in activity just because we ran out of money.
Well, what's interesting is if you look, let's say in the third quarter of 2019, at that point, we would have available, if you're looking at resources that are committed right now, we'd have the 1.5 available. We'd have the 300,000, that's 1.8. The foundation has 700,000. That's 2.5, right? Yeah, so 2.5 million available. That's sort of in hand now. 2.65 with the library committee. And then you go across the top, and you don't hit that number until the second quarter of 2020. So for running total cost of the project. So even if the foundation didn't raise another dime, and I'm not suggesting that by any means, we're in pretty good shape to get the cash flow early in the game. And that's really important, especially with that big expense in Q3, that's the digging the hole and putting up the structure, I think, and Charlie's over there nodding his head. So I feel, I started this analysis not knowing where it was gonna lead. And I have to say, I'm pleased with where it led, because I think we're in a reasonable position, and I think that the board can make the finding this evening that we can proceed with this. That's my opinion.
The two variables out of here are the obvious one, how much comes in, and then managing what goes out. It would be too easy to try to spend too much too early.
Does anybody have any questions of the owner's rep, Charlie Rafai, on his numbers tonight?
I'd like to invite David Cockey, who has asked tough questions of us over the last several meetings, and I know he sent us an email yesterday that I tried to answer, but David, would you like to ask questions of the group?
Actually, not too much. I have to say that spreadsheet is absolutely great. And I think, you know, questions at least I had 4 weeks ago were really the spreadsheet answered. And I have to say, after I saw the spreadsheet and heard that it was put together with the Library Foundation, I felt like it was a complete different what I was hearing. And I won't go in what I heard 4 weeks ago, but it's just a totally different story coming from the Library Foundation in terms of what they're saying, along with their plan for what they do. So I think that's just great. You know, it sounds like Library Foundation's on board with this is what their goal is, and good reasons to hope they can do it. I guess the only really remaining thing I'd like to see is some acknowledgement from the Select Board that you plan going forward to be giving some very visible public updates on where things stand, to give everybody confidence that things are going. In past career, I know there were some people that if a project wasn't going well, you just smile, tell everybody everything's okay because it'll eventually come together. And sometimes you skate by and sometimes it blows up. And I think it's my opinion is if a project's going south, it's better to know it up front and come up with a plan of how to do it.
Well, we have the chair of our new library building committee in the audience tonight, Bill Chapman, which and that's a public committee, and that's the reason that committee was formed, is to be transparent.
I guess
about
that was one question, is that committee, I watched the meeting of that committee online, is that committee going to be managing the finances, or are they just
They're gonna
more
be-
responding to questions.
Yeah, they're gonna be making some decisions about the project as it goes along. They won't be managing the finances.
Yeah.
The finances will be managed in the town office by our finance.
So
director.
anyway, my suggestion is at least once quarterly or something, have an updated spreadsheet to see, are things, if they're on track, everybody smiles, you're in great shape. If you see them starting to be some variance from being on track, well, then that's the time to start planning.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great idea.
That was my question for the board, because in my response to you, what would be a reasonable time period to receive formal updates?
I
And
agree that quarterly is
quarterly
good.
would be reasonable.
I think quarterly might be not frequent enough
Yeah,
at these
I
heavy
think-
spending periods where at each
Okay.
month, we get here's our actual, here's our forecast.
Is that reasonable work, Megan?
My hope is that once we get bids back, we'll have more concrete numbers for month-to-month expenses. And then I'll do a similar cash flow for what we do for our municipal budget and hope that we stay within the targets for those months.
Yeah, I would
So I'll be
think
doing that monthly.
that we could do that monthly.
Yeah, I would think it could
We'll
be-
be doing the work anyway, it's just, and
Just put
making
it
a
in our
report.
packet every month.
Yeah.
So your challenge is gonna be, and you'll figure it out, but when invoices, forecasted
Right.
expenses versus when the invoices land, could be, you could have an invoice that lands 3 months late,
Right.
and that's not good. So the project committee and the project manager have to know what was spent, whether or not the invoice landed on your desk or not.
Right.
All right,
So is monthly good?
yeah, sounds good.
The, Megan, you're going to be paying, sorry, I was just thinking about promptness of paying for the vendors. Is it
We'll
going
be
to be
paid
in
once a
terms-
week like we do
Okay.
our regular invoices.
All right, every week then they'll be,
And then what I'll do, probably in the tighter, the months, the quarters that we have more expenses going out, I'll bill the library foundation every other week. Other than that, I'll bill them once a month.
Ready for a motion?
If there's no other comments, you can make the motion, we can discuss it.
All right, well, it would give me great honor to move that the Rockport Select Board adopt the following order. Article 2 of the warrant for the November 6, 2018 special town meeting of the town of Rockport, Maine was approved, and such Article 2 authorized a project described as the design, site preparation, construction, and equipping of a new library building, including all other expenses reasonably related thereto. Article 2 of the warrant for the November 6, 2018 special town meeting of the town also contained authorization for the town to issue general obligation securities to fund the project, subject to a condition that the Select Board make a specific finding. This Select Board order contains the finding referenced in the condition language of Article 2 of the warrant for November 6, 2018 special town meeting of the town, so it is attached in here. Therefore, the Select Board affirmatively finds that sufficient grants, donations, and/or donation commitments have been made in order to move forward with the project.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion as presented? Any opposed? Thank you for everybody's, this is a group effort, and that's terrific. Okay. Moving on, we just have, the next item on the agenda is to announce the formation of a comprehensive plan committee. We have a timetable in our packet, and basically, this is just to sort of let folks know, we had a prior comprehensive plan review committee that went through the comprehensive plan, and Bill Napower has now said he's ready for the next stage of that, and the material we have talks about it being about a 15-month process. And so This is an announcement to folks out there who would like to serve the town on a comprehensive plan committee for about a year and a half or so. It's interesting work, and we would be glad to have that. So we have a suggested motion here, if anybody would like to make that motion.
I move to formally announce the formation of the Comprehensive Plan Committee and to invite interested members of the public to submit their names for consideration by the Select Board.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this?
And Jeff will be the liaison.
Yeah.
Yes.
liaison, yeah.
And you can perhaps get with Bill Napower and see what he wants to do. Bill is talking about having a fairly large committee for this process, 15 people, mainly because it'll end up getting divided up into different subcommittees, and people will work on different sections of it, I think, but that'll be up to Bill to organize.
what is-
He's also feeling that there's a certain amount of attrition. People get on and then don't make it the whole length.
Well, yeah, I'm just looking at the timing, but, okay. We've got our slate full here for the next couple of months.
Yeah, that's for
Oh,
sure.
it's gonna be.
And it's showing spring of 19 to be kicking into high gear on committee meetings, et cetera.
Now, Bill is very good at managing that stuff. I don't know whether you've had much chance to work with Bill yet. He
Right.
will, he'll be
He's
very
good.
helpful with this, so. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that's a 5-0 vote. Finally, the last item from new business, we all received a letter from the town of Lincolnville regarding Midcoast Solid Waste. I included it in the packet just to make the public aware of it, and I think, I don't think it was any new information for us, but I wanted to put it in there, and we don't have to make any motion on it or anything like that, but it seems to me, my opinion only, and I can let everybody else, but that what the town of Lincolnville suggests as far as asking us to support things makes all the sense in the world.
It does, and I think it's all things that, as somebody said, I guess,
They're
as
already
Rick
underway,
said,
yeah.
they're already underway. And in particular, the finance committee, as you know, I'm on the finance committee now, and we're already talking about, adopting a purchasing policy, investment policy. I'd like to take some of the internal controls work that we did here in Rockport
Absolutely.
and get, hand that over to them to take a look at and to, borrow and copy from, for those things that make sense, rather than reinvent the
no-
wheel.
no
And
fun
obviously
reinventing the wheel,
other
yeah.
towns as well. And then the governance committee, the first bullet, with respect to basic governmental practices. I did a mission statement, I drafted a mission statement for the, to establish a governance committee. And our next meeting is, of this group is on the 27th. And I reminded Owen and Beth to make sure that that mission statement that I had drafted and passed by a couple of people would be on the board, on the agenda, as well as the establishment of the governance committee, which I intend to be part of.
Excellent. So, again, I included this just to sort of get it out in
Yep.
front of everybody, and I think that Lincolnville, as I said, pretty well hit the nail on the head, and I don't have any
Yeah.
reason to disagree with what they've said, and I think they deserve our thanks for writing the letter.
Another item of new business, I guess this is just a sort of a heads up. I think you all saw the email that I sent out that apparently Camden and Rockland are going to be starting to talk about some regional EMS services. That starts, I think next week they're having a meeting, and I think it behooves us as the select board to at least be kept up to date on how that's going and at what point we might want to jump in and be involved with the process. So just a heads up.
Right, and I know that Jason, I think, I could talk to Rick about it, Jason plans to go to that meeting and keep us informed. It's a complex issue. There's a lot of things to talk about as far as personnel costs and capital costs and things like that, but certainly, yeah, we should be at the table to have the discussion. It may be that,
So would one of the reasons we're making our West Rockport station bigger now is to house a potential ambulance? Are we getting the cart ahead of the horse?
I had not heard that.
No, I'm just asking. Just because.
Well, something that,
No.
that I've thought about with the West Rockport Fire Station, and it'll come up again at budget time, if you look at structure fires and things like that, those have been going down quite consistently for the last several years. On the other hand, the fire department's responding to more and more automobile crashes. And so I think as a select board, we may want to start to look a little bit at the mission statement of our fire department. You know, I think there may be more of a need for general emergency medical services response. And it may fit in with redoing the West Rockport Fire Station. So I don't know what the right answer is, but again, I just want us to be aware of it and be thinking about it as we go forward.
Okay, we've already done our wastewater commissioner business this evening.
Darn it.
Liaison reports. I can say that I haven't gone, cemetery has not met. ORC will be starting its season soon. It's going to be a very short season this year. There isn't much on the docket, but Bill Napower has sent out the schedule, and they'll be meeting toward the end of this month and into March, and then they'll be finished pretty quickly with the work plan. Legacy Rockport is continuing to look at the bridge. Yes, David?
Yeah, I got an application, I guess too late for this meeting, to be alternate on the ORC. And I really don't care whether you appoint me, you know, I think you know I've attended most of the
Right,
meetings.
yeah.
Could I somehow get on the mailing list for that? Because
I
I
will-
plan on showing up, I guess the first meeting's in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, I will have Bill put you on the mailing list for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yep, no problem at all. Forgot where I was. Oh, Legacy Rockport. They're looking at the bridge dinner. They're pretty serious about doing that. They've talked about some ideas and targeting a couple of fundraising things in town, Simonton Corner Hall, the lime kilns at the library, and tapping into the folks at those institutions that could help put the dinner on. And most everybody I've talked to around town, when I've mentioned the bridge dinner again, they seem to be pretty excited about
Yeah,
it.
okay, that'd be great.
I was a little concerned that it might get old hat after a little while, and maybe it would if we did it every year, but, you know, it's been a couple of years now, and so there seems to be some excitement about that. So that's what Legacy Rockport is doing at this point.
Party.
And ambulance review did not meet?
No, they did not.
I
Nope.
don't know
We're
when.
trying to set up another meeting. It looks like March.
I
Okay.
thought there was gonna be a doodle poll.
There
set
was,
up.
she's
it
getting
yet.
I haven't seen it
concrete,
yet
no,
either.
she hasn't gotten the concrete dates from Butch yet. He was leaving on vacation, so.
So, that's all I have for liaison.
I sort of did my
Midcoast
mid-coast thing. The
Hallways.
only thing that I would add to that is that we're meeting on the 13th this week with the Camden National Bank, with the wealth management people there for starting our, they're gonna be doing our investing of the Midcoast Solid Waste assets, and actually get some interest and so forth on the funds that we have. So, anyway, so the finance committee is meeting on the 13th with them.
Anything else liaison report-wise?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Pathways had a meeting on the 6th, covered Maritime Farm activity, Riverwalk activity, Route 9 crossing activity. So those are still very much under discussion. And I'm waiting those notes. I could not make that one. But that's going on. I volunteered for the rec committee because the rec committee did not have a formally appointed liaison up to this point. So,
That's right, Owen was it.
yeah, so I'll work with Craig and we'll figure out how to do it. It'll be virtual, but he was looking for a contact person, so I offered up. Harbor Committee had a bunch of activities going on, everything from tents and how big, and not so much how big, but how much to charge, and activities down there, fee schedule for proposal through the town. And we also started to cover some of the requirements around moorings, including lock size, chain size, bottom chain size, shackle size, pennant length, the
that
works.
is a bit, yeah.
Okay, so all that stuff is in discussion. And there's another meeting coming up very soon. Comp plan we just talked about, capital committee has not had a meeting of recent.
Okay.
Unavailable for the conservation meeting last Thursday. I gave some direction to Dave through an email, Jackson, with the parks surrounding the budget schedule. I think he should be there Wednesday night, or somebody should be. That's it.
Library committee, as you can imagine, has been very excited about their secretive activity in getting the donation together, so that was quite fun, actually. The investment committee meets tomorrow with the intent to discuss the Weidman Foundation Trust. Again, this is the $400,000 has been sitting here, intended to be used to help pay healthcare bills for Rockport residents. I've been thinking about it a little bit in preparation for tomorrow's meeting, and I think it's a little bit more complicated than it might seem on the surface. So at any rate, I'll be bringing the report back to our next meeting, how things look there. Planning board has not had a meeting since we last met, so that's it for me.
Okay. We have an executive session, which I don't think will be very long this evening. And we probably will have a motion coming out of that, but I can get that to you tomorrow. It's basically just going to be approving the job description. No secret about that. So if there's nothing else, then I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved. Yep, pursuant to. Yeah, here you go. Here you go.
Move to enter into executive session, reference personnel matter pursuant to 1 MRSA, Section 405-6A.
Moved, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor? Okay. None opposed, 5-0 vote. Okay, I'm gonna try to get these things signed before.